People of Reddit, what's the darkest secret you found out about a family member slash relative? My father tried to kill my mother while she was pregnant with me. Did he go to jail? No, he did not.
When I was a kid, we went to my grandma's house every Sunday and all of my uncles and aunts would be there. One day I noticed that one of my uncles didn't show up anymore, so I asked my family where he is. They told me that he wouldn't be able to visit anymore because he moved away. Years later I found out that he raped and killed 2 women and they locked him up.
2 years ago I found out that my dad had a wife before my mom, and she died in a freak accident on their wedding night. She was sleepwalking and fell to her death over the balcony, if anyone was wondering. Stepfather was cheating on mother. Didn't find out because he was caught cheating. Found out because he and his mistress were drunk, got in a fight, and he punched her so hard that she fell over and died. Found out about the whole thing during the investigation, the trial, and the conviction. Was weird to have a lawyer want to call 12-year-old me to a stand to defend the character of man I already had very little interaction and a fear of. And that was before the manslaughter charge. I found out that my grandfather's first wife, before my grandma, died of botulism from eating some tomatoes she had canned at home. She could have been saved, but he refused to take her to the doctor because the botulism was her fault. He let her die to teach her a lesson. Edit, they had 2 kids he left motherless. Guessing she didn't have a choice in whether or not to be the one responsible for canning her own food either. There is strong debate in our family as to whether my aunt fell out of the window of her flat, whether she jumped or was pushed. She survived, but with brain damage, and says she can't remember. My dad told me that, before my mom and dad broke up, he hadn't been happy with her for several years. My mother even had a miscarriage at one point, which destroyed the both of them. But he couldn't leave her, because he was afraid that she would hurt, or even kill herself. So his only thought was to have a kid with her, so that motherly instinct would hopefully prevent her from killing herself. Are you the child that resulted? What a burden to have to carry. My uncle didn't have an aneurysm stroke spontaneously. Sorry, I'm not a doctor. He deliberately stopped taking his blood thinners. Dude was 63 with a wife, 4 kids and 15 grandkids, the oldest of which was 13 and the youngest was not even a year. He was just done. His wife doesn't know. His kids don't know. I only know cause I overheard the family doctor telling my dad. As far as I know, only myself, the doctor, and my dad know. I found out that my great-grandpa got away with murder. He thought that my great-grandma was cheating on him with her dentist. So he went into his office and shot him. He got away with it too, and they didn't find out that he did it until he told everybody before he died. Edit, since a lot of people are asking if she actually cheated on him. I don't know. But, considering he was an asshole, that she was afraid to leave, and he ended up being capable of murder. Probably. Damn. My great uncle was murdered along with his wife. The murder suspect was run down and got stuck in a swamp. Shot himself in the head. The strange particulars. My uncle, his wife, and the murderer were all deaf/mute. The murderer was renting a room from them. This happened in the 40s, and no one ever found the motive. A few years ago, I took a DNA test and found that I had cousins who had descended from the murderer's wife. Turns out my great uncle was cuckolding him. It's like a horrible silent film. Sorry OP. My mom and dad decided to take in my 3 cousins because their mom got into a horrible car accident. 2 girls and 1 boy. The girls were 6 and 10, the boy 12. Fast forward to when the 6-year-old girl is 14 years old and is asked about birth control. She starts sobbing saying her brother, the then 12 years old, took her virginity when she was 6, and that it continued until she was about 13. We had no clue. My step-grandfather had a completely hidden life in Australia before he met my grandmother. He had a family and kids in Australia and faked his death by driving his car off a cliff, then moving to America. His kids thought he was dead until my grandmother found out about them and reached out years later. His son actually became a famous comedian over there. And from what I know, has a joke he does at his shows about his father faking his death to disconnect from them. My grandmother used to kidnap and sell young girls in Mexico back in the 50s and 60s. She would sell them to ranchers to presumably be wives and or sex slaves. She was not a good person at all. A cousin confided in me a month ago that she was molested by my grandfather when we were kids. She even told me that I was there with her when this was happening and I somehow don't remember anything about it. I hope he's burning in hell for it. My cousin was a pedophile and I didn't realize until I became one of his victims. My sister had mentioned him making her uncomfortable in the past. But I was young and didn't put 2 and 2 together until almost a year after I'd become a victim. I'm pretty sure I was drugged. I was babysitting his kids for the summer and spent most nights at his house. My mother just kind of shrugged when I told her and nonchalantly said that she knew he was capable of it. She was the one who said I should go do it. And she made sure to take the money I earned by guilting me out of it. I only made like $40 to $80 a week working from 8 AM to 11 PM. TLDR, my mom may have basically sold me to my cousin for chump change a week one summer. Found out that a great uncle pretty much got away with murder. His wife turns up dead and she had bruising around her neck. Criminal forensics wasn't too advanced back in the early 1900s. Don't know how they ruled how she died, but he remained free and ended up marrying her sister a couple months later. Oof, my mom saw her friend die in front of her because of a bus. My mom even said that she saw her intestines coming out her mouth. Mind you, my mom was I think 9 or 10 years old at the moment. After she told me about that, I never questioned her again about her past. Because who knows what else she went through. I may think she is problematic, but seeing her sad is not my goal at all, and I felt terrible for her. And for the kid. Since a lot of these are about murders and rapists, mine is a bit funny. We once found a family photo album in my wacky aunt's house. Start flipping through the plastic pages and boom. Gangbang photos. There had to be like 20 to 30 people in these photos. It was back in the 80s I'd imagine, and everyone was so hairy and ugly. I guess Aunt Jan is part of a swinging community. Edit. Wow. Thank you everyone. This is the first time I've gotten a lot of love on here. It's a funny story only me and my brothers know. We've always considered our Aunt Jan to be very weird. But after seeing that album it all kinda made sense. Nice lady though. My dad's grandfather and his friends murdered a fish and wildlife ranger. More or less openly. And got away with it. They would go on an annual hunting trip. This was long enough ago that they did this by taking a train of pack mules out into the wilderness in rural Northern California. They would spend a couple of weeks at least nominally hunting, but mostly drinking really heavily. One year one of my great-grandpa's friends was shot by a ranger. The ranger, who I'm inclined to believe, for what it's worth, said it was an accident. What certainly wasn't an accident, although they maintained the story that it was that on the next year's trip they encountered the same ranger. And that time the ranger was the one who was shot and killed. It was ruled accidental. No charges were ever filed. But I've heard enough other stories about what kind of man my great-grandfather was to know that he murdered that man. I never met him, but my dad knew him well. And believes the same thing. To me it's a really frightening example of the kinds of things people got away with in small towns and rural areas back then. It was an extremely isolated area. There were hardly any roads even. My dad says he remembers my great grandfather bragging in the bar about murdering the ranger. And nothing ever came of it.